So this tutorial will hopefully help you to be able to create your own score in Sibelius. We're going to use the Beethoven score as our example to use with Sibelius. Once you open Sibelius, you should get a screen that looks like so. You may notice there's lots of different types of score which you may want to use when you're composing. But for today, we're going to concentrate on blank. So if you click on the blank, you should get a You need to go to change instrument and a screen will appear like this. Then if you type in flute in the search bar, it will appear below, and then you can double click and it will appear in state and score. You need to do this for each individual instrument, making sure you select the correct ones, such as clarinet in B flat, nothing else. You will see a list on the right hand side starting to appear, which should be similar to the one you have in the Beethoven. It's important you get the trumpet in E flat. The violin, make sure you click that it is the one with the Roman numeral, and if you notice the string instruments are in a list one after the other, so you can add them very simply like so. Change the aspect to landscape. Our time signature is 3/4. You can select different tempos below, but this is easy if we just type in Allegro con brio into the tempo text. Metronome, as we know from Studio One, helps control the tempo. So it's a dotted minim, so we need to select a minim and then the dot, and then change the key signature is one that has flats in it, so we need to select the major flat keys. E flat major has 3 flats, and click on create score. Now we have our score. If you click on your mouse, you should be able to drag the score. The keypad is an also really important thing we'll need throughout the rest of the tutorial to be able to input notes. If now you click on a bar, the end bar, right click with your mouse, and if you go to bar, which is at the very top, you'll be able to add extra bars needed. Go across, and if you select other, then you'll be able to say how many different bars or the amount of bars you want. Type in a number into the number of bars section. So if we look at our original score, this will tell us how many bars in total we'll need. So we can see that we can count along to the very end of the score, and in total we'll need 15 bars. So in total 15. The best thing to do now is to count how many bars that we have already, and then obviously only add the right amount. So we've already got 5 bars, so we need an additional 10 bars. These will then appear in purple like so. If you wish to zoom in on your score on the bottom right, then there is a little zoom in plus and minus, and also a bar along the bottom where you can scroll along. To start inputting notes, click on the first bar of the flute and it should go blue. You then need to select the note value or crotchet and then input the note at the correct pitch value. If you notice, you can put the crotchet in 3 different places because it's in 3/4. So first, second and third space. We want it in the first. So we check our score to make sure we're putting it at the right ledger line or the right note value. It's important that for the 2 notes you put them in one after the other so that they will be played at the same time when you come to play back your score. If you decide to add 1 note to the oboe and then perhaps input the clarinet note, When you go back to the oboe, the second note you put in for it will overwrite the first, so you have to do them one after the other in the same part for them both to be inputted into the score. If you notice, when you hover over, it will come up in grey and you can select where to put the note. Now, because the staves are quite close together, it might sometimes accidentally input it under the bassoon, so if you click on the bassoon staff and drag it down, it will create more space to be able to input your notes with much better ease. So now you can see that I've inputted the whole of the first bar, all the different notes. What I've done is I've adjusted the staff size, so if you go to layout and staff size, if you make it too big, sometimes the notes get quite crowded and it's hard for somebody to read. So the best staff size for this particular example is 5.6, so click on the little menu thing and press 5.6. You can still zoom in and out using your cursor, and that way you can see things easier but still have the room to input the right notes and the right values. Here is a good point for you to pause if you haven't done so already and make sure your score has got everything up until the first bar. You may notice that the second bar is a repeat of the first bar in all the parts, so you can either input them one by one, or you can select the preceding bar, press R on your keyboard for repeat, and you'll notice it will repeat each part. Save some time. Another alternative which you could do is you could obviously minimize or make the screen smaller, press the bar, press shift and click down to the end of the contrabass and then press R, so it will actually repeat a multiple selection of bars all at the same time, also saving you some time. Another little trick is once you've inputted your notes, say for example you've put them or put your note at the wrong place, you can use the up and down arrows on your keyboard to move the note value up or down on your keyboard. To turn the minim into a dotted minim, you click on the bar. In your keypad there is a little dot, which obviously is the dotted value, and will increase your minim to the dotted minim value. For the cello part, you'll notice the rhythm is a minim and then a crotchet. You can't just put a crotchet next to it, you have to change the rhythm value on your keypad, otherwise you'll end up with a tied note as such. So you might have to unclick the tied value and delete the note if you accidentally try to put a minim at the end of a 3/4 bar. You can press R to repeat the rhythmic value and then adjust using your up and down arrows to get the correct pitch value. It's up to you, or you can input each note separately. It doesn't really matter. The next thing that we need to do is we need to include the repeat sign. So right click and press bar line start repeat and click it on the line where we want that bar line or that repeat line to start. It's really important that we put it in the correct place. Now I'm going to show you how to add different accidentals to your notes. So if you notice again in the cello part, in one of the minim parts, dotted minim, it has a sharp. So in the keypad, if you select that note, then you can add the sharp. You'll notice an accidental or a natural sign appears in the one after it. You can either add another sharp to that note, or if you add the tie mark, then it will just get rid of the extra sharp. The violin now has an interesting syncopated rhythm, so click on the bar and then click on the quavers. It will just divide the first note into quavers. It will make it easier for you to add that first crotchet note in. Notice the first 3 beats are crotchet, crotchet and then a tied quaver. If you just keep adding crotchets in, Sibelius will automatically tie the quavers across the bar for you, making your life a little bit easier. If you notice here though, the score starts to look a little bit different than the one we've got. because they've divided where the page turns. So if you click on that bar where the page is and click enter, then you will notice that it goes over to the next page, which will make it easier when you're comparing your score to make sure you have exactly what Beethoven scribed. You notice the bars are quite squished together, so just drag a few down, and that will mean that they will space themselves out, and then it will be easier for you to input notes in the future. Use this time now to pause this tutorial and to make sure your work is up to this particular point. So starting to input some of the rhythmic value or the melodic value into the violins and adding that repeat mark. This part of the tutorial is going to show you how to use your MIDI keyboard. So if your MIDI keyboard wasn't plugged in already, you may need to close down Sibelius, plug it in, and then open Sibelius back up. You notice sometimes when I'm pressing the notes, the right pitch value isn't coming up, so I may need to adjust the octave or OCT plus or minus on my MIDI keyboard for it to input at the right value. So it may just be trial and error, and I just delete the notes that I don't need, but make sure you do end up with the correct notes. Now I found them properly, I can just play them in. Notice though that as I'm playing them in, the rhythm value stays the same, so watch out you don't accidentally put in the incorrect rhythmic value. Here, when I've put in the A, I've played an A on my keyboard, forgetting that in the actual key signature it's an A flat. So I can either add this in with my keypad, or I could recorrect it by playing it actually on my keyboard as an A flat. But really we shouldn't have that A flat showing because it's already in the key signature. I could cheat here and press repeat on the previous bar to get the same rhythmic value and then play in the correct note values using my MIDI keyboard. There are lots of different options you can take in Sibelius. Neither one is right nor wrong, and neither one is faster or slower than the other, but it just depends on what you find most useful. I prefer to just input the notes by mouse and clicking. You may prefer to use your MIDI keyboard. It's completely up to you. Now I've inputted all the notes needed for my score. I'm now going to teach you how to add dynamics. So if you click just below where you want the dynamics and then right click, you need to go to text and then you need to go across to expression. But notice it has an easier shortcut, Control E. Click again just below where you want your dynamic, right click, and then this will appear and we want forte or F. So if we click there, we'll see the F appear. So if we do it again, we click below. This time we can press Control and E, so it's quicker. Right click, press F, and then our dynamic will appear. At this point here, we need a different dynamic. So we could Control E, click, right click, so left click, right click, and press Control P, and that's piano. To add the crescendo, if we right click, we notice crescendo is there, or Control Shift and C. So there's always shortcuts in Sibelius for the most popular of the dynamics or notes. Now if we press Control Shift and C on its own, it won't work. We must press Control E for expression first, or you can do it another way. Then Control Shift C, and that will add in our dynamic marking. Or you can always click, left click, then right click, find text, find expression, and go about it that way. On the second part of our score, there are some interesting dynamics in bar 10 in the violins parts. You notice it has SF, which means you have a sudden attack, sudden loudness. So if we bring up our menu again, we can see our SF there, and we can select that one. But it also has what we call the hairpin, and this is a diminuendo. Now to find this, we need to left click, then right click, and find line. It has a shortcut also L, and we either click crescendo or decrescendo, which is also known as a diminuendo. we need to drag the end of the diminuendo so it lasts for the entire bar. But make sure the end doesn't go too far and lines up with the last note that we have in that bar. So now, can you pause the tutorial and add in all the dynamics you need for the score? I've added in all the dynamics into my score of Beethoven. So what we now need to do is we now need to look at articulation, and this is how a particular performer will play the notes, but the composer has to tell the performer to do this. The first one is a staccato mark. So if we look at the flute, we need to select the notes that the flute play. If we look at our keypad, there's a little dot there, and that's staccato, which means play it short and spiky. We can select a whole line of instruments if they all staccato. In this case it is, but this often isn't a good way to do this because there'll often be music after this section and they won't all necessarily be staccato. Or if it's your own composition, you may not want a whole section staccato, you may, it's up to you. One way to do articulation in this respect easily and quickly is to select one bar, to press shift and then click down to the contrabass bar 2 and then press staccato. This will make all the notes, all the chords staccato in one quick second. There are always shortcuts in Sibelius to make your life easier. Another articulation mark is a tremolo. So select the violin 2 in bar 3, and if you go along with the keypad, you'll notice that there are different options you can have. We're looking for one in the bottom left, and there's one dash across it. We select that, then we'll end up with a tremolo mark, which will sound like this. Add in all the tremolo marks that you'll need. You'll notice there's quite a few on that first page in both the violin and the viola parts. The last bit of articulation now that needs to be added to the score is that of slurs. And slurs are what make the music sound nice and lyrical and smooth, and they're a real important part of music and of composition. There are several different ways in which you can learn how to do slurs. Some are quicker than others, and again it just depends on what you prefer. So the cello part has the first slur, and what you can do is you can left click on the bar itself, then you can right click and go to line. And if you notice under common areas we have slur written there, so we can select slur and it will appear over our music. Notice that it's slurred the two notes next to each other because we selected the bar. We need to drag it to the crotchet note on the second bar. If we select that bar again, we press S this time, much quicker, it will slur all those three notes. Again, select the bar, we can either press L for line and click on the slur and then obviously drag it to where we need it to go, or we can select the notes that we want to slur, press S and it will slur it. You'll find a way that works well for you. In this bar here I've accidentally made a mistake. In the oboe part I've put staccato markings, so I'm just going to select all the notes there, select staccato and again, and then they will all just go back to normal. Since I've selected that, I pressed S for slur, but notice it went to the end of the bar. I don't want it there, I want it to the E or the E flat, so I've just had to drag the slur across so it's correct. So now we're going to play the score from the beginning. If you select the first note of the flute, you can go from play or from play from selection. And what we're going to do now is we're going to listen to the actual music from the beginning so we can hear what it should sound like. So So I do apologise, the music seemed to run ahead of the score slightly, but that basically is your way to start and to finish Beethoven's Eroica in Sibelius. All the best!